Hello, I'm Patrick Ryan from the Tennessee World Affairs Council, and this is Impact, Japanese Business Investment in Tennessee, the special project of the Japan-America Society of Tennessee. And today we're talking with Mandy White from Jackson, Tennessee. Mandy is Chief Economic Development Officer from the Jackson Chamber, and she's also former president of the Tennessee Economic Development Organization, a former board member of the Tennessee Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and currently serves on the board of the Japan-America Society of Tennessee. Mandy, welcome, and thanks for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to speaking with you.
Well, we're very interested in what's happening in your area, in Jackson, concerning the Japanese foreign direct investment there and what it's meant to your community. But first, let's talk a little bit about your background. Where were you born and raised, your education, and how did you come to be in your role with the Jackson Chamber now?
Sure. Well, I'm originally from Middle Tennessee near Nashville, a small town there called Ashland City, and chose to go to college here in Jackson, Tennessee at Union University. After graduating, I frankly didn't know what a Chamber of Commerce was, but took a job here as a temp, and now some 23 years later, I've not only learned what we do, but I've grown to really appreciate and love what we do. And in my role here, I work with others in Team Madison County to recruit manufacturing companies to Jackson, to retain those that are here by building very mutually beneficial relationships and really helping to create a culture and a community that entices growth and investment.
Well, that's terrific. And Jackson certainly is an important city in Tennessee and in Western Tennessee, closer to Memphis than Nashville, but along the Interstate 40 for those who aren't familiar with where Jackson is in the state. Can you tell us a little bit about the economic landscape in your area? What sorts of commercial activity do you enjoy there?
Sure. And you described it nicely. We are along Interstate 40. We're the hub of West Tennessee, the largest community really between Memphis and Nashville, and right along I-40 with 10 exits here, 4-lane highways that really radiate in every direction, which means so much, as I described for you, about our regional approach and how we draw people from the area to Jackson. Our retail trade area is about 400,000 people, so we look a lot different in person than we do on paper. With our county being just under 100,000, we really have amenities of a much larger city. People come here for work, for play, for medical care, really for quality of life. We have a diverse landscape. Our distribution of labor is balanced. Nice blend of healthcare. One of the top 10 largest not-for-profit healthcare systems in the U.S. is located here in Jackson. But all of our eggs aren't in one basket. We have manufacturing, which represents about 14% of our workers, and then of course, retail, commercial, professional services as well. But where I work every day in the manufacturing, we have more than 60 of those located here in Jackson. And in the last 5 years, those companies have created right at 4,000 new jobs and have invested $1.1 billion into the local economy.
Well, that's terrific. And let's turn to the Japanese companies that are in your area. Can you tell us something about the background of how Jackson came to be a place where Japanese investment found itself?
Sure. Our first Japanese company, and we have 7 currently, our first Japanese company located here in 1990. At the time, it was called Puro Denso. Now it is TBDN Tennessee Company, which is Toyota Boshiku and Denso. So I wasn't quite working here yet in 1990 to know why they chose to come here, but I can tell you that the reason that they have stayed here and have grown here, and the other 6 companies have come here, really a lot of things that probably are common sense. Our business-friendly environment in Tennessee. Tennessee itself is within a day's drive of 76% of U.S. major cities, so location, of course, is important for both the receipt of the raw materials, but also the finished products getting where they need to easily and quickly. Our available sites have all been well vetted. Our workforce and training opportunities are here, but mostly it's about relationships, and it's relationships that the state has forged for years with Japan. It's relationships with suppliers, and and vendors, and really the relationships that we have had and maintain with our existing industries. In my experience, the Japanese know that if another company has been successful somewhere, that they will be too. So I think just doing what we say we're going to do and really supporting our companies and building those relationships on a local and a corporate level have allowed us to be successful.
Yeah, we talked with John Gregory, who was one of the early hands in the attracting Japanese investment to Tennessee. He was at the Tennessee Economic and Community Development Department, and his interview is one of those in the series. And he emphasized relationships at all levels, public partner, private partnerships. And he kept, he actually started using, he would say the R word, relationships. So it seems to be the universal application of welcoming businesses to communities that get them involved. Tell us a little bit about the sectors that are representative. Denso is an automotive supplier, I believe. And what other companies do you have there? And I suppose that the advent of business in Jackson with Japanese investors, if Denso was among them, was probably coincident to the introduction of automotive manufacturing in Tennessee as suppliers and such.
You know, and you're right. And really in the Southeast in general, I think that, you know, Tennessee, the automotive sector is really important to the state of Tennessee, and Jackson is no different. 6 of our 7 Japanese companies are related to the automotive industry, and one of them is a recycler that works with our local automotive companies and others. But we have Toyota Motor Manufacturing Tennessee here, TBDN Tennessee company that we previously discussed, which is Toyota Boshiku and Denso. We have Toyota Boshiku Tennessee, which is a separate company, UGN, which is Nitoku, Most Missouri Smelting Technologies, which is a Toyota Susho company, as is Green Metals, the recycler that I spoke about moments ago. And then our newest company came here in 2015, and that's Pacific Manufacturing Tennessee, which is part of Pacific Industries in Japan.
Do you know if there are Japanese expats, Japanese citizens who have come over to the States to be working with these companies?
There have been. You know, we have noticed a change in the last decade or so that whereas previously a lot of those people brought their families over, some still do, but we're finding now that they come over as individuals and are allowed, of course, opportunities to go back and visit with their families, but they might do 2 or 3 year stints here at the local facilities, and then they're transferred elsewhere to one of the other plants stateside, or they're sent back to Japan to work at one of the plants there. Okay.
Anything noteworthy about interaction between the Japanese who come to live and work in your area and the local community?
You know, I think much like my 2 experiences having traveled to Japan, the Japanese as a whole are some of the most polite and friendliest people that I have had the pleasure of working with. And that really translates into how they are in the community. They have genuinely been some of the most pleasant people to work with, both at the company level, and then as you get to know them on a personal level, many have become friends, and several are usually really sad when they have to leave here because they have felt so welcome and engaged in the community on both a business and a philanthropic and personal level.
Well, that's great to hear. Can you talk a little bit about what the community has gained from the foreign direct investment from Japanese corporations there in terms of, we talked to economic and community development people, and they beat the drum, jobs, and that's certainly a component of it. So tell us about the number, how many jobs that the community has been given by the investment, the scale of the investments, workforce development, impact on workers in the community, those kinds of things that we're really interested in highlighting in this project.
Of course, our Japanese companies represent over 2,400 direct employees here in Jackson. Of course, it's probably nothing new to you that for every 1 job in manufacturing, about 3 are created elsewhere in the community. So not only are our manufacturing companies being successful with those 2,400 individuals, but look at the small businesses they're able to support. Look at the other ways they're able to get involved. Their investment has represented over $1 billion in the local economy. Much of that goes towards schools. So even indirectly, they've had a great impact on the workforce and the schools here. But we have found that our Japanese companies and really our manufacturers as a whole are really great corporate citizens, and they care about our community. They're genuinely very well connected, and it's not uncommon at all for them to reach out to us or to the local school system to be involved in, I think it's called STEAM now, what we know as STEM programs or robotics clubs or engineering programs, co-op programs. They're really some of the first to step up to the table to say, look, we know what we need, but we want to be a part of the solution. And that's just one of the many reasons why we enjoy having them here.
So in addition to the wages that are brought in and the taxes that are collected from these businesses, there is a sort of payback, or at least paying it forward in education, training and development. Are there any training programs specifically, community colleges or other efforts that corporations there might be getting hands-on involved in, either financially or by participating in those kinds of programs?
Sure. One of the first that comes to mind is the AMT program, the Advanced Maintenance Technician program at Jackson State Community College. Toyota at its OEM facilities, and let me back up and say here in Jackson, Toyota Motor Manufacturing Tennessee manufactures engine blocks and transmission casing. So while a significant employer here and one of our best partners, we don't have an OEM facility here, but we still are one of about a dozen cities in the country that can boast that we have a Toyota facility here. But at their OEM facilities, they have this program for advanced maintenance technicians where they have enough need that they have a whole class of students that graduate from this 2-year co-op program with part of the week spent in the classroom, part of the week spent in the plant. And they had the need here, but with a plant of 400 people instead of 4,000, it's a little more difficult to justify having a brand new program. So they called me, and we met with Jackson State Community College several years ago and have created a community-wide AMT program with nearly 30 consortium partners now. So by taking the Toyota model and the curriculum that was developed at the Toyota facility, they were willing to share that for the betterment of course, their own plant here, but really our industrial community as a whole. And now we have 30 industrial partners that participate in this program and hire and employ these students during their 2 years while they're in school. And then, of course, the goal is that they would hire them permanently after graduating, and most often they do. So to me, that's just one example of Toyota and our Japanese companies really being selfless and providing information that, they spent time, they spent dollars creating this program that they saw success in other communities. And they really decided to share it with our community. And we've been benchmarked all over the country now. I think it's pretty unique to have so many companies participating collectively and together on this one goal. And we sure are grateful for the difference that it's made.
Well, that's terrific to hear that kind of story, that companies coming into your area aren't just, we hear people talk about Tennessee being attractive because of the business environment and the quality of the workforce, but obviously these companies are interested in workforce development down the road, that they have long-term investments and that they're interested in continuing the education and training of future employees.
Sure.
Well, what other impact might you share with us? Any anecdotes or case studies, things that interaction between Japanese businesses in the area and the community? What's the attitude in the community as to Japanese companies coming in? Is it a mutually compatible relationship?
It certainly is. We have a community, I mentioned our healthcare system being so large because of the 60 plus manufacturing companies that are here, many of whom are international companies. because of our large healthcare presence, many of those employees are from outside of the country. We've been really blessed to have a great and diverse culture here. Our Japanese companies have been really involved in things such as the Jackson Symphony. They were an integral part of starting our international festival, which I believe is in its 7th year now, that celebrates and embraces diversity and cultures. And really our community does that as a whole. We as a chamber want to make sure that our business leaders are prepared to interact appropriately with our international guests and residents here. So we do things such as training on Japanese etiquette, and so that when we do have someone here from Japan and they meet with a banker or a realtor or with us, they feel comfortable. Our business cards are in Japanese. The small things that might seem like they wouldn't make a difference. Almost always when I present my business card with 2 hands, as you should, to someone visiting us from Japan, they're often really pleased and surprised that we would have our business cards in Japanese. And that small thing, I think, goes a long way in saying, you are important to us. We welcome you here and we want to work with you. So those things have been very helpful for us.
To be sure. And it goes back to what you pointed out earlier, relationships being key to making the best of these investments and the community response and what the community gets out of the investment. Now, as you mentioned, Jackson is a hub to Western Tennessee. So I suppose that there are employees of these companies that come from surrounding counties. So the impact, the economic impact and prosperity is not just in Jackson, but in throughout the region.
Very, very much so. In fact, the census will tell you that 50% of Madison County's workforce commutes from outside to work here. In manufacturing, it's even higher, as much as 60 to 70%. So absolutely, our Japanese companies here have an impact, not just on Jackson, but in our surrounding areas as well.
Well, that's what we hear from other stories around the state, that when a business lands in one place, the impact, it is spreading prosperity in the connecting region. Well, Mandy, thanks for taking your time to talk with us. Any last thoughts on what it means in your community to have Japanese businesses investing there? Just that
one of the things we pride ourselves on, we think we do a good job recruiting, but we think we do a great job on those relationships and those existing industry connections that we have. And it's nice to work with our Japanese companies because they value those relationships as much as we do. They're some of the most welcoming and helpful and innovative. They bring so much to this community, not just in the jobs or the investment, but just their presence here and their concern for our community and making it a better place for their employees and their team members. And we are sure grateful for their presence here.
Well, thank you for that. That's something I'm sure people are going to appreciate hearing. Last call on your pitch to Japanese businesses that might be looking at this and want to know more about Jackson. What would you tell them?
I would tell them that if they want to be in a place that has great infrastructure, a great location, sites that are well vetted, that would eliminate risk, they can move on quickly, that they would be in good company with not only our Japanese companies here, but others, and with business leaders that understand what it takes to support our industries. I would encourage them to give Jackson a look. We would welcome that chance.
And there's always the benefit of the Tennessee business environment and the geographic positioning within a day's drive to most of the eastern United States. So Jackson has that going forward as well. Well, right. We've been talking with Mandy White, and she is the Chief Economic Officer at the Jackson Chamber in Jackson, Tennessee, also a current member of the board of the Japan American Society of Tennessee. And this has been our special project on the impact of Japanese investment in Tennessee. Thanks again, Mandy. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Patrick. Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.